sit beside the Father. But at some point, God is going to go into the most holy place. So this is what happens. I beheld till the thrones were cast down, were set, and the Ancient of the Days did set. That's God leaving here. You're seeing it move. You're seeing the movement. God leaves here, and He moves inside of there, and He sits down. That's the Ancient of Days did set. Okay? Now let's listen to the rest of it. A fiery stream issued and came forth from before Him, and thousands ministered to Him, and 10,000 times 10,000 stood before Him. That's the same thing that we saw in night number 2, dealing with the angels. That's how many angels there were. So we're finding that the angels are all there with Him. God goes in and sits down. The angels are there, and the judgment was set. Now we talked about earlier, there's going to be a judgment. God has appointed a day in which judgment will come. We have seen the Day of Atonement is at the end of the daily service, and they had the Day of Atonement. Judgment was come. So God moves in from here, inside of here. Now look what happens. Then it goes on to say, and I saw in night vision, and behold, one like the Son of Man came with the clouds of heaven, and came to the Ancient of Days, and they brought Him near before Him. So Jesus now moves from here, and He goes inside of here. Now the judgment has begun. So during the time dealing with the 10 toes, during the time dealing with the 10 horns, now you find that judgment sets. It's exactly the way the Bible describes it in the sanctuary, the yearly service. There's going to be a judgment that sits in heaven. My microphone keeps bothering me. Hold on one second here. That should do it this time. Okay? Now, looking at verse 14. Now, listen what happens. And now, this is after He goes in. Judgment's taking place. Judgment's sitting. Day of Atonement has begun. It says, and there was given to Him dominion and glory and a kingdom that all people, nation, language should serve Him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion which shall not pass away, and His kingdom which shall not be destroyed. There's that rock again. You see what's happening? We have in that story of the image, we have the stone coming, but in that part where the toes are, we find out in Daniel chapter 7, there's a little more information given about between the time that Jesus comes and the time of the kingdom before. And there's a judgment in that particular one dealing with the toes, down there with the 10 horns. So we have the same, it's the same thing. Goes on to say, and I came near unto one of them that stood by and asked him the truth of all this. So he told me and made me know the interpretation of the thing. And he goes on to say, these great beasts, which are four kings, which shall arise out of the earth, but the saints of the Most High shall take the kingdom and possess the kingdom forever and ever, even forever and ever. You catch that? The Bible says, those last beasts were 4 kingdoms. Then comes the saints. There's not a 5th kingdom. There's not a 6th kingdom. Then Christ comes. So I have good news for you. We're at the end of time. There's one more. Now let's refer back to Daniel 7. The judgment, I'm going to show you tonight that it's already going on. So I already put on there, this part is happening already. The thing that's left to do is the same thing as all the other ones, Christ's second coming. Okay? Now let's look at another one. Now this is the second dream that Daniel has, but this is in chapter 8. Okay? It's another story. Now listen to how it unfolds. Okay? And there stood before the river a ram which had 2 horns. Okay? Do you remember the image had 2 arms? We said it was the Medes and the Persians. You're going to notice that this one is going to be mentioned first because this is at the end of Babylon. Babylon is almost gone. Okay? And as I considered, behold, an he-goat came from the west. Now, listen to what it says. And the goat had a notable horn. This is not the little horn. This is a notable horn between his eyes. This is dealing with what we saw as the third kingdom in the other two visions, okay? But it's the second kingdom in this one. Let's go on. And smote the ram and brake the two horns. Okay, so now he has overthrown the kingdom. And therefore the he-goat waxed very great, and when he was strong, the great horn was broken, and for it came up four notable ones. That third kingdom in the other prophecy was the leopard who had four heads, four horns. The Bible's going to tell you exactly who this is, but I'm just trying to lay the foundation. And out of one of them came forth the little horn. So now we're down there with the toes again. That was the next kingdom, okay? Which waxed exceedingly great. It's going to tell you just a little bit more about the time right at the very end, okay? Yea, he magnified himself even to the prince of hosts, and by him the daily sacrifice was taken away. So you have that kingdom that starts here from the legs and goes down to the toes. By the time it gets to the toes, it changes. But from up here, it's the Rome. Rome is the one that's in power when Jesus comes on the scene. And it says the daily sacrifice was taken away by this kingdom that the little horn's coming from. That kingdom was the kingdom that was in existence because the Romans put Jesus on the cross. So you know that this is dealing with that kingdom, okay? Oh, and by the way, and the place of his sanctuary was cast down. This is also going to take place during the time of the kingdom from the legs down to the toes. And the host was given to him against the daily sacrifice by the reason of transgression, and it cast down the truth to the ground, and it practiced and it prospered. We're going to see that in more detail on the afternoon meeting tomorrow. Listen to what it says. And I heard one saint speaking to another saint, said unto that certain saint which spake, How long shall be the vision concerning the daily sacrifice and the transgression of desolation, to make both the sanctuary and the host to be trodden underfoot? So you're going to notice he's asking a question, but the answer doesn't really fit so much with the question at this point. The answer comes in, it says, And he said unto me, Unto 2,300 days, then shall the sanctuary be cleansed. So he's asking the question, how long is this kingdom going to be in existence where all the people of God are going to be hurt? How long is this going to take place? And it comes up with this statement, the sanctuary being cleansed. But here's the thing. He's going to answer that in just a little bit, okay? But you're going to notice that it says the sanctuary to be cleansed. We know that the earthly sanctuary is cleansed at the end of every year. The earthly sanctuary was foretelling the time that the heavenly sanctuary would be cleansed. So reality, this is going to be the basis for me describing to you exactly the date in which the sanctuary is going to be cleansed. You'll see that as we move on to chapter 9. And it came to pass, when I, Daniel, had seen the vision and sought for the meaning, then behold, there stood before me as the appearance of a man. And he says, And I heard the man's voice was called and said to Gabriel, Make this man understand the vision. So he didn't understand the vision, okay? So he comes and he says, Behold, I will make known to thee the vision in the last end. The same thing that we find in Nebuchadnezzar's dream was for the end of time. This one's also for the end of time as well. For the time appointed, the end shall be. Okay? Now, the ram which thou sawest having two horns are the kings of who? The Bible's telling you who it is. So there's no doubt that we're dealing with the second kingdom. Babylon is almost gone. Medo-Persia is about ready to overthrow Babylon. This is the one that's taking place. The one that comes on the scene after that is going to be the one the notable horn. And the rough goat is the king of Grecia. Isn't that interesting? The Bible tells you who it is. From the other ones, we were seeing it by history. Now this one's given us who exactly they are. Okay? And it says, And the horn that is between the eyes is the first king. Do you remember who led the army in Greece? Alexander the Great is the one who led that one. And you'll notice what it says. And now that being broken, therefore stood up stood up for it. 4 kingdoms shall stand out of the nation, but not in his power. When basically, Alexander the Great died very premature. They didn't expect him to die. They didn't have any plans of who to take his place. So the different generals fought over who's going to lead, and it came down to 4. 4 of them now it's divided into 4, just like the prophecies foretold. We know from history and from Daniel 2 and 7, the power that followed Greece was Rome. So in chapters 2 and 7, it was shown in 2 phases, imperial Rome and divided Rome. So we know that the next kingdom is supposed to be the Roman power. And out of this part here is where we find this little horn comes to power. Okay? And I, Daniel, fainted and was sick certain days. Afterwards I rose up and did the king's business. And I was astonished at the vision, but none understood it. He didn't get a chance to find out the whole story. He didn't understand about warring against the saints and casting down the sanctuary and continuing the time of end. He didn't understand that one. He didn't understand about the cleansing of the sanctuary. That he did not understand. So he goes about the king's business. But everything in that dream, we have more information in the toes area. It still says the next thing to take place is going to be the stone, because we see in that one there's a judgment that sits. We've seen that, and that's exactly where we're at today. So judgment is where we're at. What's left to come is the second coming. Daniel has a prayer, and then there's a dream in chapter 9 that comes to him, okay? Now he's having a prayer. Now in the first year of his reign, Darius, I, Daniel, understood by books the number of the years whereof the word of the Lord came to Jeremiah the prophet, that he would accomplish 70 years in the desolation of Jerusalem. So the idea was this: they were in captivity for almost 70 years at this point. And he's thinking, what about that dream I had? What's that 2,300 days thing? He's thinking, well, maybe God is going to change what he's going to do because of conditionally. They didn't follow and didn't you remember when let me put it this way. Remember when they were going to destroy Nineveh? Nineveh repented and God didn't destroy Nineveh. But later on, Nineveh turned bad again and it was destroyed. But it's conditional. And maybe he was thinking, wait a second. We're supposed to be coming out of captivity already. But it doesn't look like anything's moving that direction. And he says, this was 538 BC. 13 years had passed since the vision in chapter 8. So it's been 13 years since he dreamed about this. And then it says, Babylon has just recently fallen to the Medo Persia. And then it goes, the Jews have been in captivity for 68 years. Their temple is still laying in ruins. So you get the picture. Okay? Daniel is worried that the 2,300 days and cleansing of the sanctuary from Daniel 8 that were not explained to him may refer to an extended captivity. He's worried about it. So he said this is in Daniel 9. Now he's praying. He sets his face before the God and speaks and seeks by prayer and supplication with fasting, sackcloth, and ashes. And at the beginning, this is after he has this prayer. An angel comes to him and he says, I am come to show thee, for thou art greatly beloved. Goes on to say, therefore understand the matter and consider the vision. Daniel was praying. He didn't have a vision. The vision he had was in chapter 8 concerning the time dealing with the 2,300 days. Going back there, you see, and I heard a man's voice. He was supposed to teach him what it was. Gabriel went to show him and understand him, and then he did not understand it. So now he's come back to give him understanding, but it's 13 years later. Okay? He didn't understand these two parts of the prophecy, and the cleansing of the sanctuary, and the warring against God's saints.